Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for July 13th, 2018. On today's episode, we'll discuss movie theater etiquette and talk about the latest film and TV news. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Sciretta, and joining me on today's podcast is Senior Writer Ben Pearson.
Hey, what's going on?
And Writer Hoai-Tran Bui.
Hey, everyone.
Okay, guys, before we get to the news, I wanted to run a couple things by you in terms of movie theater etiquette. We don't really have a proper name for the segment. I think we're going with the temporary, what do you think? I don't know. Maybe our readers, or rather listeners, have suggestions. If you do, send them to peter@slashfilm.com. But anyways, I went to, I used my AMC A-list to see Skyscraper last night. At my local AMC theater. I will talk more about that in the water cooler, but I wanted to start off, I saw it at a Prime Theater, and during, or not Prime Theater, Dolby Vision Theater, and during the trailers, they have like the lights on for the entire trailers, like fully on, and people were on their phones, and people were talking, and usually I feel like when the trailers start, not the commercials that play while you're loading into the theater, but when the trailers begin, like the lights kind of dim a little bit, and like everybody usually pays attention to the movie or to the trailers. So I wanted to ask you guys, like, is it okay in this situation to be like on your phone checking, Facebook or talking to your significant other next to you, or is it rude?
HT, what do you think?
I've never seen that happen before, where they leave the lights on during trailers, and I feel like that's the theater conceding that you can do that, but I don't know if I would. I mean, like, I sometimes talk during trailers to make like a snarky comment to whoever I'm sitting next to, not a stranger, like my friend. Yeah. Like, hello, stranger, look at this joke I have. But I don't think I would just like speak at regular volume and be checking my phone the entire time. It just feels very strange to me, especially since like until now I've always seen trailers as part of like the movie experience. So yeah, I don't think I would. But yeah,
I will say this, strangely, I was sitting there and like I got like my phone vibrated in my pocket and I took it out because everybody else was like on their phone and I like looked at it and I was like, this feels wrong. Like this feels weird. Yeah, Ben, what do you think?
I mean, I think HT's right. If the lights are fully on, that's basically the theater saying that it's okay. I think so let's pretend that the lights weren't on. Let's pretend that the lights dimmed.
And I should say, like, the lights were maybe at like 75% brightness. It wasn't like full on lights.
Yeah, but most theaters, at least main like multiplexes, they dim those lights like mostly all the way when trailers begin, right? Like I'm not crazy. Okay. So I think in a normal movie going situation, I think in terms of like whether or not it's okay, I think it's like right there on the edge. I think anytime I would never do it, but I think that's the last window you have is when the trailers are happening, because I think you can consider that sort of like extra material and like once the actual movie starts, you better put your shit away. Like there is zero tolerance in terms of, in my mind, as soon as the actual movie that you paid to see is there. But I think trailers are sort of like this gray zone where it's still fine if you're trying to fire off one last text or something before you fully wrap up. I'm always nervous when people around me are, have their phones out and stuff in the dark theater during the trailers, because I'm like, oh my God, is this somebody that I'm going to have to be paying attention to for the next few minutes while this movie starts? Am I going to have to lean over and say something and ask them to turn their phone off? Are they going to be doing this for a long time? But most of the time, people that I frequent in the theaters that I frequent, they have their phones out during the trailers, but are generally pretty good about turning them off once the movie starts. So I would not really do it. I wouldn't make it a habit, but I think it's probably okay if that's the question you're asking.
I mean, I don't know. Deep inside me, from the ethical standpoint, I think you are right. But I also think that like the bottom line should be, are we being considerate of the people around us? And too many people are still sitting in their chairs, even like during the trailers, during like this instance, with their phone brightness like fully up. And you should, lower your phone
Drop
brightness.
That down. Yeah.
And I'm not saying that makes it okay to take your phone out during a movie, but if for any reason you have to, why not set your phone brightness all the way down before the movie starts, just in case, like, if you have kids at home and there's a babysitter and, if something might happen, you know what I mean? Like, be considerate of the people around you. And, I'll also do the same thing, HT, where I will, whisper to a stranger next to me, or to my girlfriend next to me, during the trailers. But I will whisper. I don't think it's like talking loudly out loud. But anyways, I wanted to use this opportunity to talk about a couple things that have come up online in the last, I think, week. A couple articles. And the first of which is this article from Matt Singer at Screen Crush? Yeah, Screen Crush. He basically put this poll on Twitter. It started with this poll on Twitter asking, is it okay to throw candy wrappers and garbage on the floor at movie theaters? Because he thought it was fine. And the poll results were overwhelmingly 89% said no, you are a monster, and 11% said yes, it's fine. And in result, he wrote this article on screencrush.com, which I'll link in the show notes, basically advocating that it is okay to toss litter on the ground in a movie theater in certain exceptions. And he says, obviously you don't want to put anything gooey or liquid like soda or nacho cheese on the floor. And if it is any kind of food that you brought to the theater, you should properly dispose of that yourself. But if it's like, candy wrappers with candy purchased at the concession stand, in plastic encasing, like a box of Goobers or like Starburst. I guess he likes to eat Starburst and open those like. Well, by the way, why are Starburst candies individually wrapped? It's so annoying. But anyways, that's another topic. So I guess I wanted to propose this question to you guys: Is it okay to leave a mess at the movie theater? You are paying for it. There are ushers there to clean up the theater, or. And when is it okay, or is it just not okay at all?
HT, I want to hear from you again.
No. This question offended me. I voted in this poll in part of the overwhelming no, and I don't think that just because there is trash on the floor, you should add to that trash. Matt Singer's argument was essentially, we spill popcorn on the floor all the time. We don't bother to pick it up because we know the ushers will come and clean after every screening, but that doesn't give you license to just add more trash. There's still service employees having to clean up every time. And I think that just because they're there doesn't mean that you should take advantage of that. It just annoys me so much. Like, even when my friend leaves like a soda cup behind, I get really angry at them. Like, no, clean up after yourself.
Okay, can I be devil's advocate here? And this is not a viewpoint that I agree with. But what if we were all, so courteous to remove our trash, then the movie theater would not employ these people. Like, we are making jobs, HT.
I'm pretty sure cleaning up after the theater isn't their only job. I'm pretty sure they're the same people who rotate between the cash registers and have to clean the bathrooms and everything. So I think that we're doing them a courtesy by not making them work overly hard for a job they probably get minimum wage for. Yeah, this is a topic that made me really angry just because I've one time spilled popcorn all over the floor and I was so anxious about it the entire time. And I think it's just really rude and not good as a human being.
Yeah. What? I'm kind of in the middle here. I do think that you should clean up after yourself at a movie theater. I would never leave things on the ground at a movie theater, but occasionally I have left my cup in the cup holder, and I don't know why. Like, that seems okay to me. I always usually take the popcorn and throw it away. Ben, do you have any feelings on this?
I feel like HT is just a better person than I am, because I think I am sort of on Matt Singer's side here. Like, I realized.
Oh my God, I did not expect this.
I'm just saying, okay, if we all left like a candy wrapper or several candy wrappers after leaving the theater, we would have just like the entire floor would just be coated in candy wrappers. And that's not good for anyone. It's just like builds up. It's like WALL-E. It's the end of WALL-E. This is where this is leading us, guys.
I've been in movie theaters in Boston, where I used to come from, or used to live rather, where I actually saw during a movie a rat go by and steal like a piece of popcorn.
Wow.
And run by, yeah.
So I'm not as extreme as like I will maliciously, do this or like make a point to do it. It's one of those things where it's like if it mindlessly happens during the movie, I don't feel bad about it, and maybe I should. I don't know. Maybe I really had never really given this much thought until I saw Matt's article and that Twitter poll and everything. But I think
where's the line drawn for you?
Yeah, I don't know. I certainly think that absolutely like no, liquids or anything that would cause a mess that would take more than 1 second to clean up. Because my understanding is you just take like a broom or a big brush or something and just sweep underneath the entire aisle. So if people are going line by line anyway, I sort of see where Matt's coming from, where it's like, they're going to be going through that entire section. It's not going to make that much of a difference. And I saw that he quoted somebody in his article that was a former movie employee that said that as an usher, time spent not cleaning a theater is often spent standing around and waiting to clean another theater. The more arbitrary sweeping, the less time there is to kill. So, as somebody who that's, straight from the mouth of a movie theater employee himself. So,
see, that's weird because I've known a couple of movie theater employees and like they have always been like cleaning up after themselves because they know the struggle of, cleaning the movie theater.
I think I think in the grand scheme of things, I will probably try to make a better effort to clean up all of my stuff. Like you, Peter, I take popcorn with me. I take my soda cups with me and stuff. It's just like if I have, a piece of candy or a little tiny, a wrapper, a mint wrapper or a bag or something like that, a small little plastic thing, I might let that slip to the floor, but I guess I'll try to just to be a better person overall.
But yeah, I think, it also sets the example of like, how much do we value this movie going experience? Like when we're just like leaving trash all over the place, like it kind of devalues the whole experience, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's true, and I think that's also what HC's talking about. Like, it could be the inflection point, like how far is too far, and that's in this article that's on Screen Crush. Britt Hayes argues against Matt Singer, and that's part of her argument. She talks about how some people consider the movie theater to be like a house of worship almost, like you have this reverence for it, so you wouldn't go around throwing trash all over the floor at your church or whatever. So it's that same sort of mentality.
You wouldn't at your church. I would at mine, Ben. I don't have a church. Okay, let's talk about our last and final article here for this segment, and that is this article that was posted, I think, last week on Slate.com by someone named Chasen Gordon, and it's titled, "It's Okay to Partially Bootleg a Movie When You Have to Pee. Not legally, but maybe, or not legally maybe, but morally." And basically this journalist, put that in quotation marks, argues that, they have a problem with sitting for 2 hours without going to the bathroom. It's been something they've kind of dealt with their entire life. And one time during Dunkirk, which isn't even the longest Chris Nolan film, right? They had to go to the bathroom, and in the moment, they hit record on their phone and put it in their the cup holder on their seat and recorded what they missed while they were gone, so that after they had come back and saw the rest of the movie after the credits, that they could go back and see what they had missed. Now, admittedly, going to the bathroom during movies is not something that I've had problems with. I can hold myself pretty well, but this seems wrong, not just legally but morally to me. This person argues that their screen is dark while it's recording. I have not seen a phone that records with a black screen, so that I'm a little skeptical of that. But even so, Ben, what are your thoughts on this? Is it okay to record a movie in the movie theater if you're going to the bathroom?
I think if there were, God, yeah, this is something that like Chidi from The Good Place would have a whole like nervous breakdown about. I think this one's tough because I think no is like the final answer. Like, just don't do this. This is a bad idea, and just don't do it. But I think maybe an argument could be made that like you paid for the ticket. So like, but no, I was trying to give this thing the benefit of the doubt, but I think this is so ridiculous that there's no way that I can even like play devil's advocate for this argument. Also, before we go to everybody else, this article also recommends that directors insert a pre-film PSA that indicates the ideal time to pee. And they said every scene is precious, but even directors can admit that one or two are calling it in. if that's part of your argument, that is like, I have nothing. I'm putting zero credence in anything else that you have to say, because that's ludicrous.
But by the way, I'm not sure if you guys know this, but there's an app for the iPhone and Android called RunPee. I've never used this, but apparently it is an app that will tell you the best time to pee during a movie, the part of the movie that you'll miss the least. So you can have it in your phone. You can start it when the movie starts, and it will like vibrate when that part is. So you could go, and then while you're peeing, it will tell you how many more minutes until you have to get back to the theater for the important start to kick in. That just seems ludicrous to me to like even have that. Although, if I ever had to go to the bathroom, that seems like something I would use, but it's not really a problem for me. Not to stereotype things, but I've heard that holding your bladder is a lot more difficult for women. So, HT, has this ever been a problem? Would you advocate this?
I just think that this is a very, very specific problem for this particular writer. Because it seems he just has bladder problems in general. I will say I think that my bladder is pretty strong. And I have only had to go to the bathroom during like a very long Pirates of the Caribbean movie in which there are a lot of scenes of water and I was drinking like a large soda. So that was like a very specific moment. But yeah, I don't know. It seems like this is something that he encounters a lot, where he has to go to the bathroom multiple times during a movie. I think that he probably should see a doctor instead of writing an article about this.
I'm actually shocked that a site like the Slate is like a good publication would run this at all. Like it almost seems like it's there for clickbait. Like, do you know?
Yeah,
like that?
It seems like it's trolling, especially with that pre-film PSA nonsense at the end. Like, come on. I think that's. I mean, part of what I was going to try to argue was like you paid for the experience, but part of it is also. The thing that sort of supersedes that is like there have to be consequences for actions, and like you have to live with your decisions. And if you made a bad decision beforehand or can't, you don't get to have it all. It's like somebody who, when you're driving on the highway, just decides to cut off a bunch of people because they realize that their exit is like, coming up, it's 100 feet away. So I'm just going to swerve in front of, 5 lanes of traffic just to hit this exit because I made the mistake of not preparing properly. No, you go to the next exit, turn around and go back. You don't inconvenience other people. You don't get to have it both ways. So I don't know. This is ridiculous.
The PSA thing is weird, but I don't understand why he didn't just ask or like recommend the return of intermissions to movies, because that used to be a thing, especially when movies are longer.
It's still a thing internationally.
Yeah.
If you go see a film overseas, like that is regularly a thing.
Yeah, so that makes more sense than like the PSA of like when you can leave when the director is just phoning it in.
It's interesting because I feel like your highway analogy isn't good enough. I feel like the analogy probably would be. Actually, this doesn't even seem fitting, but I was going to say, I've talked to some people that like, they have a DVR, they've DVR'd a show, and they're going to travel, but they want to have the show on their iPad or their on their phone or their laptop so that they can watch it on the plane or during their travel. So they illegally download it because they pay for the cable, they pay for that show on that show. They have it recorded, they just don't, want to take the steps of transferring it. So in that case, is it okay to illegally download the movie that you technically own, or a TV show you own? But in that case, I think that's not somewhere because it doesn't hurt anybody else. Like in this case, like having a phone in a cup holder, I don't believe what this person's saying. I believe that there would be brightness coming from the screen as it's recording, so it would inconvenience others. I mean, what do you guys like in the case of not to bring up a fourth argument here, but in the case of traveling with shows, like, is that okay? Or is like morally, obviously it's not okay legally.
See, I think that's a really interesting sort of moral dilemma. I think that's a much more interesting one than the one that this article presents. I think probably I would do so, but I think morally or legally at least and ethically it's probably wrong, just because, just make that extra step or wait till you go back or something.
Yeah, I think that one is probably more okay because it's just something that affects you and that's it. But yeah, I'm with you, Peter. I don't think there's any way that you could record something in a theater. Maybe you could record the audio and have your screen off, and then just if you missed a line of dialogue or something, and that wouldn't bother anybody. I mean, I would say that is one shade more acceptable in my mind than recording the video. But
imagine listening back to 10 minutes of Dunkirk with the Hans Zimmer score like that the ticking down
and especially that movie because the dialogue is borderline incomprehensible anyway. So.
It's the way that Christopher Nolan always intended us to see it.
Okay, we have a bunch of news to get to. This segment lasted longer than I thought I was going to, but I think people are going to enjoy it. But let's dive into the news. We still haven't talked about the Scarlett Johansson Rub and Tug movie. HT, there was a lot of controversy around this. Tell us about it.
So on July 2nd, it was announced that Scarlett Johansson was going to star in Rub and Tug as Dante Tex Gill, who was a crime boss in Pittsburgh who ran a string of massage parlors in the 1970s and 80s that doubled as prostitution hubs. But immediately after the announcement of this news, Backlash occurred because Dante Tex Gill was actually identified as a transgender man, as opposed to a cross-dressing woman, as some outlets early on misidentified. So this immediately sparked a huge outrage on the internet and resulted in Scarlett Johansson initially releasing a statement that was at best dismissive of the concerns. So the concerns basically boil down to Scarlett Johansson is a cisgender actress, cisgender meaning you identify with the gender that you were born with, playing a transgender man. We've seen it with Jeffrey Tambor in Transparent. We've seen it with Jared Leto in Dallas Buyers Club, and we've seen those actors win acclaim and awards for that. But the community argues that by casting actors of the gender or the opposite gender that these people identify with, Hollywood is perpetuating this idea of transphobia, essentially, that transgender people are lying about their gender as a means to sort of dupe people, and it's harmful overall to the transgender community. So Scarlett Johansson, after she released this statement, went silent. But today, she has announced that she has dropped out Rub and Tug and will no longer be playing Dante Gill. Okay,
so I wanted to ask you, HT. I'm trying to play devil's advocate here. Again, another viewpoint I do not agree with. But why can't someone like Scarlett Johansson play this part? Acting should encompass everything. A straight man should be able to play a gay man should be able to play a straight man. All that stuff. Why is it important to have a transgender person in this role?
Because there are many of transgender actors now who often get shut out of these roles or don't get the opportunity to play roles such as these. And it's given in favor of actors or actresses that have a higher standing in Hollywood, quote unquote. But often because of controversy like this, the movies end up bombing, or they have an inauthentic depiction of this transgender person that they're trying to depict. And in the end, it's, like I said, it's viewed as harmful as well to the community overall, and it's taking away these jobs from transgender actors. And there's this idea that transgender is an identity that is not to be used as a costume. It's sort of similar to how when actors of when Caucasian actors, for example, play characters who originally were Hispanic or Asian or Southeast Asian or Black. even. Yeah, blackface too. That is something that is no longer okay anymore. And I think transgender people, like the Hollywood is beginning to realize that transgender people are in that same category. It's not the same as just playing a different class or different type of person. It's a whole identity that is insulting to the community to have someone who is not of that community playing them. And Scarlett Johansson actually ran into this controversy before with Ghost in the Shell playing a character that people were saying was whitewashed, and is actually directed by Rupert Sanders, who is also directing Rub and Tug. So that is also, she's not unfamiliar with this controversy, which is why people were so disappointed with her taking on Rub and Tug.
Yeah. Another point I see a lot on the internet is that there isn't a transgender actress or actor who is of the star power of Scarlett Johansson, so none of them would be able to get the movie made or star in the movie. But I would argue, look at Black Panther. A few years ago, I remember hearing filmmakers of note say that like they can't cast a black lead in their movie because they would not be able to get as many people to, it's not, the star power isn't there to get people in seats. And now, a movie like Black Panther is like one of the biggest movies of all time. And it just took a few years to change that perception.
And star power is sort of an empty excuse as well, because we saw with Ghost in the Shell, Scarlett Johansson's star power was also used as the reason, but that movie ended up disappointing at the box office. So did Exodus, Gods and Kings, which cast white actors in roles of Egyptians and people of color as well. So obviously star power is not the real reason that this is happening.
Yes. Okay. We must move on. We have a bunch of news to get to. Let's talk about Joss Whedon. He's returning to TV with a superhero series of sorts. Ben, tell us about it.
Yeah, so Joss Whedon is going to write, direct, and executive produce and showrun a new sci-fi show called The Nevers for HBO. He said that this could be the most ambitious narrative of his entire career thus far, and The Hollywood Reporter calls The Nevers an epic science fiction drama about a gang of Victorian women who find themselves with unusual abilities, relentless enemies, and a mission that might change the world. So, yeah, that sounds pretty awesome, I think. And, female leads and characters with special abilities are really like hallmarks of Joss Whedon's work. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Dollhouse. He's written a bunch of comics, and obviously he's directed a bunch of comic book movies, Avengers, Age of Ultron, and he sort of stepped in to finish directing Justice League after Zack Snyder had to step away from that production. So this is going to be the first TV show that he creates since or is like fully involved with in this capacity since Dollhouse, which was back on Fox, and this is, I think, his first collaboration with HBO, so that's kind of a cool thing. HBO beat out multiple bidders for this show, including Netflix, and that's got to be a pretty good feeling for them too, because Netflix just snapped an 18-year streak of HBO having the highest number of Emmy nominations for any network, but now Netflix has that title. So with Game of Thrones wrapping up and Westworld season 2 not being quite as acclaimed as the first season, HBO probably needs all the help they can get when it comes to creating like must-watch appointment television shows, and working with Whedon will probably go a long way toward doing that.
Yeah, and it seems like in peak TV, the auteurs we know in the film business are kind of going to TV because that gives them more freedom to not just freedom creatively, but freedom to tell a story on, in a length that could never be done even in the biggest of franchises. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited to see what Joss Whedon can do back on the small screen. But let's move on to some zombie news. We got a bunch of zombie stories. HT, you wrote both of these up for the site. Tell us about them.
So the first zombie movie is called The Dead Don't Die, and it's a zombie comedy by Jim Jarmusch, whose last feature film was Patterson, starring Adam Driver. And this movie will reunite him with Adam Driver, as well as several of his other frequent collaborators, including Bill Murray, Tilda Swinton, Steve Buscemi, and Chloe Sevigny. And it also stars Selena Gomez in her first feature film with Jim Jarmusch. So this is a zombie comedy that we don't know many details about yet, but it's currently shooting in New York.
You know, I never thought we would ever see a zombie comedy from that filmmaker. You know, you mentioned Bill Murray is in that film. Bill Murray has played a zombie in a previous film, and that was Zombieland. And now we know that Zombieland 2 is officially happening. Tell us about it.
Yes, so Zombieland 2 is alive after being basically dead for 10 years since the first 2009 film became a cult hit. So Sony is officially moving forward with Zombieland 2, and the original cast and original director Ruben Fleischer are all set to return. So that means Emma Stone, Woody Harrelson, Jesse Eisenberg, and Abigail Breslin are all set to reprise their roles in the upcoming Zombieland 2. So Zombieland 2 will follow the quartet as they move from the White House to the American heartland as they face off against new kinds of zombies that have evolved since the first movie, as well as some human survivors. So this will definitely be a different, probably bigger movie, since the first film was made on about $24 million budget and starred all of these actors as relative unknowns except for Woody Harrelson. But now they've all become essentially Oscar-nominated stars and are returning for this film, which will be released in October 2019, just in time for the 10th anniversary of the original film.
Now, I think we've talked about this in the past. You know, the original Zombieland was kind of refreshing when we were in an era of, that time when I think Zack Snyder started Dawn of the Dead, like that whole zombie craze of serious, scary zombies. And it was kind of fun and stylistic. And what I liked about it was, you know, the whole title premise of them being in an amusement park fighting off zombies. 10 years later, I'm finding that premise far less interesting. Do either of you have any interest in Zombieland 2?
Nope. Sorry. I mean, I don't mean to be flippant, but it's just like, I don't understand why it took this long to make this movie, because people were clamoring for a sequel for a few years afterwards. I don't know if it's just because the people involved with it didn't have a script ready to go, and Reese and Wernick, who were the writers and I think are writing back to write this screenplay, maybe had to make Deadpool before and have that be a huge hit before they could, get enough juice to get this thing going. But if that's the case, I mean, 10 years, that's like, I don't know. I just feel like it's too long, and I've just lost interest in picking up with these characters again. Maybe they'll prove me wrong. I hope they do, because I always hope every movie is great. But I don't know. Just like right now, in terms of like taking my temperature on this project and how I'm feeling about it, I could not. I just don't care about this one, I have to admit.
I'm more excited for this movie than Ben. I really enjoyed the first Zombieland, and I haven't seen it since it first came out, but I don't reference it every now and then, but I used to reference it a lot. And I think I would actually be excited to see these characters again, just because of how irreverent and fun this tone is. And I think now, especially with the dominance of Walking Dead and other more serious-minded zombie films or shows, this would be a nice, refreshing, sort of stylish spin on it again.
I'm just wondering what the pitch is, because it can't just be like, we want more Zombieland. I feel like those, that screenwriting duo must have come up with some kind of interesting twist on the zombie genre that, hasn't been done yet. And we just are not, we just don't know what that is yet. So I'm interested to see or find out what that is. But let's move on to our last story, and it's a bit more serious. That is, Downton Abbey is getting a movie that is coming to theaters, and it's gearing up to begin production. Ben, what do we know?
Yeah, so Downton Abbey, the highly acclaimed TV series, is definitely, it's getting a movie follow-up, and this is not just like a made-for-TV thing. This is going to be a full-fledged theatrical event, and the original cast is coming back, at least those who are, who survived, I guess. We don't know anything about when this series is actually going to take place. The original TV show, which I think started in 2010 and really like became an American phenomenon or a phenomenon for an American audience in 2011, started in 1912. The setting began. The first season was like in 1912, right after the sinking of the Titanic, and then it finished 6 seasons later in 1925, sort of as the middle class began to rise up in England and cracks began to form in the aristocracy a little bit. So. Like I said, we know that the main cast is coming back. Julian Fellows, who was an Oscar winner, and he won a bunch of awards over his career. He created the series. He wrote this screenplay for this film. And Brian Percival, who's directed things like The Book Thief and About a Girl, he also directed the Downton Abbey pilot back in 2010, is on board to direct this feature film.
I was never a fan of this TV show. I'm kind of like not a fan of like the kind of stuffy period drama kind of stuff. Were either of you a big fan of this series, and are you excited for this for our movie?
Unfortunately, I never watched it either. I knew of it, and I heard that people who watched it really enjoyed that it was a mixture of sort of the period piece drama and also kind of a soapy melodrama as well. And I heard that it did actually go into like the beginnings of World War I as well, towards the latter end of the series. So I thought that was interesting. I liked the stars that appeared in it. I know that Dan Stevens came from it as well, and Matthew Good also appeared briefly, but and of course Maggie Smith. But yeah, I don't really know much about it.
I just feel like, it was such I've only seen a first few episodes of the first season, but it seemed like such a small scale series, and it is like a melodrama of sorts. I just wonder, does this really need the big screen, budget? Like, what is that going to do to that? Like, are they going to go traveling? Like, I don't understand what, that medium will bring to this story. That
I don't know, I always, it sort of strikes me as something that they would have made in the 90s, like these lavish production designs and like sumptuous period pieces. You don't really see too many of those that in modern multiplexes anymore. Mostly from what I understand is because period pieces are really expensive to make. So I don't know what the budget is going to be like on this thing, but it definitely has a built-in audience. I mean, this show won like 69, or I guess it was nominated for 69 Emmys over the course of its 6 seasons, and I think it won like 15. And so people love the show. I think there's definitely an audience out there for it, but I think like from the cinematography standpoint, and this could be like a really amazing looking movie, but I just don't know what the like does it deserve a movie in theaters? I don't know.
And are Downton Abbey fans excited to see a movie in theaters? Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but none of my friends, I feel like, are like, even the ones that were watching the show, I don't feel like would run to theaters to see a Downton Abbey movie, but I could be completely wrong. Before we go, I did want to mention one last thing, and that is Ben has this great piece. We've been doing a celebration of Die Hard, the anniversary of Die Hard, and Ben has this great piece talking to 10 modern filmmakers, explaining how Die Hard influenced them. I wanted to give that a plug. I know we're going to be talking about it next week, hopefully on the podcast, but Ben, can you tell people about it and why they should read it?
Yeah, it's basically Die Hard is like one of my favorite films of all time, and the 30th anniversary is this coming weekend, and I just wanted to reach out to as many major filmmakers as I could and see if they could tell me about how the film influenced them, because it was a huge game changer in terms of the action movie genre. And I got to talk to a lot of really, really cool people. I actually got James Cameron to send in an emailed response to me, which is pretty amazing. So yeah, I just wanted to plug that because it took me forever to do all the research and get in touch with all these people. So it's one of the I guess the project that I've worked the most on, I think, since I've been at Slash Film. But I think it turned out really, really well. And all of our Die Hard coverage, the 30th anniversary, has been really great on the site. So if you guys could check that out, that would mean the world to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I still don't understand how you got James Cameron. That is insane. Okay, anyways, HT, where can people find more of your work online?
You can find me every day at slashfilm.com, and I'm on Twitter at Hoai-Tran Bui.
Ben, where can we find you?
You can find me at slashfilm.com. I am on Twitter at Ben Pears.
You can find me at /home on all social media. You can find all the stories we talked about today linked in the show notes, including Ben's Die Hard piece. This podcast, /Home Daily, is published every weekday on iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. Please feel free to send us your feedback, questions, comments, concerns to Peter at /home.com. And please, as always, go rate and review this podcast on iTunes. Tell your friends, spread the word, and we'll see you on Monday.